Okay, hello, my name is Valeria, and I'm going to be presenting on mass incarceration as a modern form of slavery, based off Michelle Alexander's writing of the book called The New Jim Crow. And I'm also going to be talking about race and racism's, Gulash Boza's writing as well as some other sources that I found. But so to get started, like I said, I was mostly um, informed and educated by Michelle Alexander's book. Um, as you could see on the bottom there, it says Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, which is a new kind of topic because when you think of colorblindness, you think maybe of equality. Like people don't see people's skin color and they just go with, the qualities of that person. But why I think she used that word is because we're not using skin color as a blatant excuse for such segregation and, on quotes, the new Jim Crow. So I thought that was really interesting, and she definitely made me think about that. And from her writing, I was introduced to the adage, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because I didn't really think that was true upon reading. I always think any kind of change is good, and there's always improvement going on in the world as far as equality and recognition of minorities, but she definitely changed the picture for me. So I think with the use of critical race theory, I was able to evaluate that and see that for myself and come to a greater understanding in her writing. So, of course, critical race theory applies to this because the author, is a person of color, and she's very much speaking about her experience and, historical precedents and things like that. So definitely a lot of theorizing going on here. So Michelle Alexander talks about a racial caste system, which is a new term for me. And on the top there, I said, it has evolved as rights have improved for Black people. So definitely meaning, the racial case has evolved. It's very much present, has been since the beginning of slavery, right? Like that was the seeds planted, and then it just kind of keeps changing. Again, things change, but they stay the same. So the process has been from slavery to the Jim Crow laws to today's mass incarceration. So racial case system has been able to prevail, especially in what I believe with the ambiguity and the creation of the Constitution, because the Constitution has been made to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. Again, that's something that Michelle Alexander quoted by James Madison, and it is very much what is proven, right? Like the Constitution was made to protect early settlers and was a way for them to kind of protect their property rights. And even though that is not the case today, we still use the Constitution. So it's just very interesting how there hasn't been any change in that. And again, why people have prevailed because of the case and from the Constitution, and none of that has changed today, right? Like nobody's changed the Constitution or added any asterisks. So I think that kind of proved to me that the racial case system is real, and it hasn't changed because the Constitution hasn't changed, and the power being majorly with white people hasn't really changed. Okay, moving on to Jim Crow laws, which evolved after slavery, because they came about when slavery was abolished, and it was again made to maintain segregation of Black people and white people. So some further research I did from the library database was, the following, which I did quote in the end, but basically in 1875, laws discriminating the use of railroads were redacted, and this is kind of where the first Jim Crow laws were made. So you could see the first Jim Crow law regarding the railroads, again, sets a precedent that the only reason why the Jim Crow laws existed and were able to exist was because white people let it, right? Like, it was convenient. So this change was only made because it would bring economic benefit while maintaining a form of discrimination. Because as you could see, or as I wrote previously there, black people would pay the same fee as white people for the use of subpar cars. So they definitely were, adding their, they were paying. So it was beneficial there. And then mass incarceration. Oh my goodness. Okay, mass incarceration is today's form of the racial case. So we have, I think it's actually very interesting how, again, police are people in power, and people in power are majorly white people, and they are kind of using their racial bias to, stop more black people and have them stopped and frisked, pulled over, and pretty much arrested, right? Which kind of sets off a negative feedback loop where, they're arrested, their permanent records are tainted, and it just gives another excuse for them not to get better jobs, better education, which would help them build wealth, build businesses, build investments, things that would really catapult them towards a better future and towards like a position of power. But again, a lot of these positions of power are held by white people, and the only way that people of color can reach those spaces is if white people make space. And it is very important to note that the war on drugs is highly associated with people of color, which does, again, cause more targeted frisking, more targeted arrests, more targeted sentences. And the U.S. has an abnormally large amount of incarcerated people. Out of, the whole world, most of our people are incriminated. And as Goza mentions, or she has like a lot of graphs in there that show how most of the people that are in prisons are black men. They are people of color. Mostly, the top category is black men. So it is very interesting that there's just a lot of ways to back this up. There's a lot of ways that these authors kind of prove these things. And even if you don't try to kind of like look into it, then you can't really say that it's not there. So if there are black people in positions of power, how is our racial case system, right? Like, doesn't that mean that no black people would be rich or famous or anything like that? But this is my argument. I'm saying that that's not the critical race theory approach, and that's not really the way to make concrete conclusions. You would have to personally ask people and read people of color's literature and really ask what they have encountered and how they have been impacted by these positions of power. Just because you do not experience or see racism does not mean it is not there. It might not just be applicable to you, or you just may not know how to recognize it, which again kind of proves the point that you should be reading the literature and you should be paying attention and asking for greater input, because I think if you do, you pretty much would experience what I experienced, which is like a shift of a mindset and a shift of analyzation. So that's what I believe. And that is all I have to say. These are my works cited and everything that kind of contributed to my thinking. But yeah, thank you.